I'm Madeleine Cole, the founder of the Flexpo event series. I'm joined today by Virginia Herlihy, who's the CEO and founder of How Do You Do It? How Do You Do It are supporting Flexpo Business as a headline sponsor and sharing their wisdom during the event as part of an expert panel discussing the impact of COVID-19 on gender equality and working parents and how we can accelerate the pace of change through flexible working. We've asked Virginia to join us today as a bit of an intro to the panel and a bit of an intro into the business and her fantastic insights into this particular topic. So without further ado, welcome Virginia. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you so much. Thanks. Lovely to be with you.
And we'll kick off with a question, if you don't mind, which is all about
Sure.
Why is flexible working so important for gender equality?
Okay, so this is where we've been enormously helped by what's happened. I know there's many downsides to COVID, but one of the upsides is that it has forced everybody to work flexibly. And that means it's equalized it. So it used to be seen very much as the territory of women, and particularly women with caring responsibilities. And suddenly everybody, young, old, carers, not carers, are working flexibly because we have to. And so we've now set a platform from which we can build for the future. And I think that it gives us a great deal of opportunity to do that. And I think the other thing that's really important about it is it is an enabler of gender equality. And it's an enabler of gender equality because quite often with gender equality initiatives, men can be somewhat disengaged from them. So when you'll notice that when you have a gender equality initiative, there are more women than men in the room. We don't engage them enough in this kind of debate. So they're often left out. But with flexible work, it's something that they can actually get involved in. They're actually benefiting from. They're enjoying the experience of flexible work and the additional time it gives them with their families, for example. So everybody wants this to work together, and that in itself will be a beneficial thing for gender equality generally.
That I hadn't even considered that element of it in this whole kind of process, so I think that's such a valid point. Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
The kind of the bigger picture on this, what impact do you think? I know you guys are based in Australia, but obviously you have a UK business as well. I think
Yes.
Australia are further forward in terms of the work that you're doing over there to have a more gender equal workforce, but you're still not where you'd like to be. What impact, and I suppose the question really is for kind of both countries, what impact do you think COVID-19 has had on gender equality so far?
Okay, so I think it's been absolutely massive. I mean, I think there are two sides to this, and in the work that we've been doing, we've been kind of researching ourselves. What are the silver linings of COVID? What's it brought us, its gifts? And what are the cons? What are the things it's really highlighted that we still really need to work on? And in terms of what it's brought us, as I just was talking about before, it's really normalized flexible work for everybody. Because I'm sure you can remember, just like me, Maddie, not so long ago, we had managers saying, but if I can't see the person, how do I know they're working? And now they've had to and now they've had to trust them. They've had to empower their teams. They've had to focus on output versus whether I can see you in the office doing things. So it's changed the way we think about it, and surprised people, I think, in the fact that we haven't all fallen over and productivity hasn't completely stopped. We've actually managed to keep working and keep businesses open. So I think that's a huge benefit from COVID. I think secondly, it's given us access to the whole of the person's life, because we're in this Zoom meeting here. I mean, if your door wasn't closed, you might have a child walk in at any minute. My dog might stroll in.
We see guarantees.
Exactly. We'll see how it goes. But what we've done is we've normalized that too. It's not surprising to people anymore. So we used to have this huge separation where work was over there.
Yeah.
And life is over here, and I'm not supposed to bring the two together. And suddenly we haven't, life is messy. Suddenly we haven't been able to separate, we've had to integrate. So I think that's been a huge benefit. The other benefit has been, and I would say I'm hearing more about this from men than from women, is they're traveling less, so they're commuting less, and suddenly they've got all this additional time that they would have been putting into things like this, connecting with their family in a way that they haven't been able to do just in little bits of time. And one of the fathers I spoke to recently was saying he's had his second child through COVID, and he's so grateful for that because he's been able to be around in a way that he just wasn't able to be around for his first child.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important. But then if we look at the cons, so this was in place before because we're now living in a highly advanced technological world. And so one of the things that doesn't bring us is boundaries. So people are now always on. Yeah. And they were always on before, now they're even more always on because there's no physical separation. So unless they're creating those boundaries for themselves, they often don't exist. And so we have this blurring of work and life and very long days and people getting very tired. Now that has an impact on people's mental health and well-being. And that's emphasized by the fact that we're living in very uncertain times and we're not able to connect in anything like the way we are used to being able to connect. So those are some major cons. And then the third one is the gendered impact. So there's no question so far. The data is saying, and of course we've got more of this to come, but that women have been more negatively affected than this by men. And they were already behind. So the situation has worsened. And how has it worsened? Because women tend to be in lower paid positions in industries which are not paid as well. They tend to dominate in the part-time work, and all of those areas are being affected. So they're affected like that. And then on top of that, men and women in terms of caring responsibilities pre-COVID, men were here, women were here doing more. And we've kind of just gone like that in COVID. So men might feel they're doing more, but so are women. And it's quite interesting to see when you talk anecdotally to women about who's sitting where in their house to do their work. The women are in the main room with the children trying to work, and the men tend to be in a separate place, you know, focusing again on their work. Now, that's not a proven piece of research. It's just coming out from discussions we're having with people. So a lot of work to do there on that.
I totally agree on that point from discussions that we're having as well, that women automatically assume that that's their responsibility.
Yeah.
And I'm not going off topic really, but we haven't talked about talking about this, but I posted actually about this yesterday because it's a real bugbear of mine, and I know that you feel very strongly about this as well.
Very, very strongly about it.
That actually, you know, things have to change in the home before they can change at work. And we, you know, it's all very well us kind of striving for equality in the workplace, but actually if we don't role model this at home and insist upon this same equality, we're not going to have the support that we need as a family network to be able to be successful. I also feel very strongly that this should be an echo chamber of agreement, and we would like this to be actionable. So I'd really love, because you're the absolute guru of this, you to just talk very briefly about, if you can do that briefly, about how women need to change their language as well when we're talking about the responsibilities that we have, if you're happy to.
Yeah, I could be on this for a while, so you might have to interrupt me. So essentially, gender equality, there are two parts to gender equality, or gender parity, and this is for men as well as for women, right? But essentially, we've got what's happening at work, and we know we're behind there, and then we've got what's happening at home. So when we're working with people, we're working with people on 3 levels, and one of the levels we're working on is the individual level, which is what can you personally do? And you can actually do a great deal in your own home to facilitate this. So you ask about language, and one of the typical things that we will hear, and we've worked with thousands, remember, of working mothers and working fathers over the 14 years we've been in business. A common thing that a mother will say is, I'm very lucky, my husband's very good, or my partner's very good, he's very helpful and supportive. So, and I will say, well, okay, let's just, that's great. And let's just stop there for a moment. And by you using that language of he's very helpful, he's very supportive, what does that suggest you believe? And of course, when we talk it through, what it suggests they believe is actually their job, they're in charge, and he's in support, which also puts the mental load, which I've also spoken about, on them as well. So there's a whole other load we're not talking about here in caring, which is also about what to do practically, mentally, as well as practically. And there are 2 sides to this. There's what your partner may need to do to step up, but also what you're doing and what you're colluding with. Now, I always say to people, if you've had a conscious conversation about this and you've agreed it, and you want to do this and that makes sense, and they want to do this, that's fine. But often we go into this quite subconsciously, and we haven't thought it through, and we end up just going into the normal roles and then wonder why we're still where we are.
Yeah, thank you, because I feel so strongly about that. And actually,
Yeah,
even you know, before this call, you and I were talking about, I'm still guilty of that, and I, you know, live in this world and I'm trying to create great change. So I think we have to constantly be correcting ourselves and helping each other to kind of break free of the societal norms that we feel have been given to us.
Yeah, absolutely.
So in continuing on this vein of action, not echo chamber, what do you think employers could be doing to ensure that COVID-19 doesn't have a detrimental impact on gender equality in their own workplaces?
Yeah, yes, it's a good question. It's a very important question right now. So again, if we look at those three levels, what can the organization do, and what can the managers in the organization do, who are fundamentally important here, and then what can the individuals do? But from the organizational perspective, their focus at the moment needs to be enabling a hybrid way of working. So in all the clients that we're working with, the surveys they're doing internally are showing them that people don't want to go back to what they had before, that they want a combination of working from home and working from the office. That's what they want. And so what organizations need to be doing is looking at what gathering data. So they need to be gathering data on what's worked for them in this period and their people, what hasn't worked for them, and what's their data telling them about who's doing what, and how can they facilitate that going forward, so that we're not left in a situation where all the men are really working full-time again, but they're just working more from home, and all the women are still working part-time, you know, taking the part-time positions. We need to be learning from this and seeing if we can extend the versions of success. So we've tended to have a one-size-fits-all approach. And sometimes that tends to give people a choice of either or. Either you're serious about your career and you work at it full-time, or you take the part-time track and you you decide to step off the career ladder. Well, how about we actually had different versions of what success looks like, with different levels of working flexibly and still being able to progress across men and women. So I do think that data point is very important, because what we're seeing at the moment still is women have been more affected by furloughing, by pay cuts, et cetera, because there's such a divide here in terms of part-time, full-time, and how that rolls. So we're looking to try and create more variety of options, I think, here. But they're really, yeah, go on.
Sorry, I was just going to ask on that specific topic. How can employers empower men to consider flex and part-time? Because am I right in thinking part of the challenge around this is that it's always seen as a women's option? So part of the issue is that men don't take that. How can employers change that narrative?
Well, one of the things they can be doing straight away, I'll just give you a simple example of this, and this was happening pre-COVID, but it's still going to happen post. When a woman comes back from parental leave, there's almost an automatic, let's have a conversation about whether or not you want to work flexibly.
Yes.
When a man comes back, what they tell us, and this is where it's really unfair on them, there's no real, it's business as usual. There's no change for you, is there? We don't need to be having that conversation with you. There's no automatic building into the process, having these conversations in a gender neutral way, and not assuming that men won't need that and women will need that. So it's all through your processes. So organizations need to be putting a gender neutral lens on their processes to make sure the same options are being offered to men as they are to women.
Yeah.
So that men benefit, and it's normalized. It's part of what we do here, that you're offered that and they're offered that, and we'll just see what you want. And I do think this working flexibly in the way we have during COVID has set men up more to feel, actually, I quite like some of this. I want to do some of this myself. So they'll have more experience and normalizing that they can do that. That's a positive. They also need to be brave, like women were brave. I mean, you know, men will look at women's careers so far who've worked flexibly or part-time and say, well, I'm a bit scared of working flexibly because what's that going to mean for my career? Well, women have already voted on that. They had to do that. They made the choice to do that. So if we're both doing that, then it ceases to become so much of an issue or so much of a divider.
And thank you, for the benefit of the companies that are still going, but why? Why does it matter? Why does it matter if we've got men full-time and women part-time? Enlighten them for me, please. Why is this so important?
That's such a big answer, isn't it? But
it
there
is,
are there are so many reasons for that. I mean, one of the things over here that's very interesting is they've just come out, and I would really suggest people look it up. There's a piece of research that's come out for the first time, which has showed a cause with WGEA and Bank West Curtin Economic Centre. And WGEA is the Workplace Gender Equality Agency. So we're the best reporter of gender data in the world, really, in this country. And what they found is there's a direct link between an increase in women in senior positions and the market value of the company to really large amounts of money. So if it goes up by 5%, it's something like the market value of the company expands by to 80 million pounds or something like that, $80 million, something like that.
That is phenomenal.
So it's massive. So if you think about, if you're fiscally responsible, you need to be looking at how you can add the most value for your shareholder. If you haven't got women in senior positions in your organization, you're not doing as well as you could be. And for the first time, this research shows that. It's actually because we've been able to look at the data over a 5-year period, same kind of organizations responding, and that's what they're finding. So there's a very strong financial reason. So it's a smart thing to do business-wise, but it's also the right thing to do, isn't it? To give people, you know, from the human perspective, choice on how they live and work, and give people more variety on how they do that. For men who actually don't want to, they want to lean more into family, and for women who want to lean more into work. And that is going to attract and retain talent. And there's always competition for good talent.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. And I think that's so critical, because often HR teams understand the value of this, but they're trying to push it up through the ranks. And I think there are, sadly, a lot of companies that will be trying to get back to business as it was before and not making the most of the opportunity that this has represented. So I think that's really important. Thank you. As a business, are there things that you have? I'm sure the answer to this is yes, but I'd like to know what, please. How have you evolved during the pandemic? Are there things now that you're highlighting and changing in the work that you're doing?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I think the thing is, in this world, we can't preach one thing and practice something different. So authenticity is very important to me. So we're being authentic in the way that we're approaching this, and we're very similar to what the organisations we're working with are doing at the moment. It's a very similar journey. So phase one, if you like, was for the organisations out there, we have to work flexibly, right? Because we're in a pandemic. And so they just did. And for us, who we work with a combination of group and individual coaching, which is face-to-face, and then virtual, but we were on the virtual journey. So we just needed to go, everything's going to be virtual. So now we're in phase two, which is where for the organizations, they're going, okay, so we're there. Now, how do we refine it and make it better? What have our learnings been? What can we do differently? What works best? And we're doing the same thing. We've learned a lot through this process. And now we're working with virtual experts to help us refine further the coaching services that we offer to get to what's really important to people. And what we're finding is really important to people is they're missing that face-to-face connection. They're missing that opportunity to really talk to another person like them who's going through what they're going through in a more tailored way. And that's actually what our work does. We specialize in having real and critical conversations with people, changing their mindset and their thinking, and starting to shift their behavior and their language and the way they talk about things. So doing that virtually is different, but we're still needing to do the same thing. Engage people, get them to be open with each other and be vulnerable with each other, actually, and be brave with each other and share solutions on what they're doing that's working. And so that's all the same, but the way we're doing what we do, as the name would suggest, we've needed to tailor.
Thank you. And I think that's really, and I think that sharing of best practice as well is critical, isn't it, in these
that's so key
unusual times. Thank you very much. So as I mentioned at the start, we're really excited that you're joining the panel on gender equality and the impact that COVID has had on that, and how we limitate the collateral damage and actually use it for good. On that vein, we've kind of touched upon this, but why is it so important that we look at the impact of COVID on gender?
Yeah, like it's critical, isn't it? I mean, the reality is, again, all the data shows us this. This is not even opinion-based, it's data-based. We're in different places. Men and women are in different places in this world in terms of how much power and influence they have and all sorts of other things. So typically speaking, and I don't want to generalize here, because I believe in equality for parity for both sides, obviously, that men typically are in more senior positions. They earn more money. They do less caring work. And they work full time. Women are in less powerful positions. If anybody's working part-time, it's them. They earn less money and they do more caring. So they're literally opposite ends of the scale. Yeah. Now, what's one thing that they both potentially can benefit from, and that they both enables them both, men to not get stuck in that if they don't want to be, and women to not get stuck in that if they don't want to be. They need more choice. And what flexible work does is it enables them to have more choice. And that in itself will be an enabler of more versions of success, an enabler of gender parity, so that both people benefit.
Thank you. That was really concisely put, and I couldn't agree more. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I feel like there's tons that we could talk about, but we'll save some of it for the event, if possible. So thank you very, very much for giving up your time and for joining us today. Thank you very much, everybody at home who's watched this. I presume that you're at home and not in an office. You may well be back in an office by now. If you'd like to hear Virginia talk more, if you'd like to be involved in the pace of change and why flexible working is so important to the future of your workforce, please do join us at Flexpo Business. It's free to come along. It's a virtual conference and exhibition. It's running on great tech. We think it's a really enjoyable experience from a user perspective. And there's the chance to ask Virginia questions, to put questions to the other panels on specific topics. To see the full agenda and to register, please just head over to our website, flexpo.co.uk. And we'll put the link as part of this video as well. So thank you very much for watching. Thank you very much, Virginia, for giving up your time. And we'll look forward to hearing more from you on the day.
Yeah, fabulous. Thank you.
Thank you.